David Begnaud was on the ground Friday night amongst the protesters. Here's what he had to say.
Okay, so we are walking onto the on-ramp of 277, the interstate. This is where I would say probably 100 to 200 protesters are now walking onto the interstate. They have already shut it down, Vlad. There are a couple of helicopters hovering above me. The protesters are chanting, I believe, "Don't shoot." It's been very peaceful. We picked them up in the city center area probably about, I'd say, 45 minutes ago. So as we spin around, Brian, let's give them a good look at the crowd. Everyone's been peaceful, Vlad. Young people, middle-aged people, people of different races and ethnicities holding banners. This is the first march ever since the video was released by the family. I say ever since. It happened this afternoon that the Scott family released a video through their attorney showing the shooting as it was captured on cell phone by Mr. Scott's wife. So there was a concern that the release of that video, watch your step, Brian, as you're coming down. There was a concern that the release of that video may actually inflame some of the protests. It's early in the night. We can't say for sure. But that's what's happening right now, Vlad.
David, it is welcome to hear that this is now going on the second night of peaceful protests and people obviously exercising their constitutional right to gather and assemble and to protest what they feel is an injustice. I want to know, David, if you've been able to talk to some folks to get their reaction of the video that was released on Friday.
I have not, but I tell you what, I can try. Ma'am, are you a protester? Okay, you're a journalist. I've been running into various people. Ma'am? Are you a protester?
Yes.
Okay, do you mind if I talk to you for a minute?
Sure.
I'm David, I'm with CBS News. As my camera crew continues to walk, I just want to ask, did you have a chance to see the video that was released today?
I did.
You did. What did you think about that?
I thought that the video did not show the whole truth because it was trying to say that Mrs. Scott had a gun, but we did not see a gun on the video. What we saw was a glove. So I just think that it was unfair that they had that on there not showing the whole truth.
Let me ask you this. So the police have said a gun was found. Do you believe the police?
No, I do not.
Why not?
Because the police is just trying to cover up what the real truth is. The wife had already said that he did not have a gun.
And I ask this with all due respect, ma'am. Being in this business as long as I have, statements are made by people all the time, and sometimes when the investigation is concluded, it turns out that the police were right. I wonder, why is it that you wouldn't believe the police when they make that statement?
Again, because the police is not giving the total evidence of what really happened. They're only giving partial evidence.
You want the police to release the videos they have?
I do.
Okay. Do you understand when the police chief says, listen, I can't do that because it's an ongoing investigation, and in order to be fair to the officers in this case, one of whom could be criminally charged, right? If the shooting is found to be unjustified. So when the chief says we have to be fair, not only to the Scott family, but to the officer involved, what's wrong with that?
Well, it's nothing wrong with that totally, but what we're saying is that if you release it, then the public, the family will be at ease.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
They would understand better. All we're asking for is a better understanding of what happened on that night.
Where are you from?
Danville, Virginia.
Did you come here just for this?
Yeah, I sure did.
Wow, I always like finding out a little bit about people. What line of work are you in?
I teach in Danville Public Schools.
You're a teacher?
Yes.
What do you say to people in this country who really don't understand the anger, the real anger that people here are feeling right now? Either because they don't see it in their communities, or quite frankly, they just think it's misplaced anger. What do you say to them?
Well, it's definitely not misplaced anger. I think that if we all come together as a community, whether it's black or white, that's how we will understand each other, by coming together.
And I can appreciate that, but give us a sense of why it's so bad in your opinion. I mean, it's not every day that a woman drives from Virginia to North Carolina simply to walk with protesters. Okay, hold on just 1 second, ma'am. So I'm being told, and actually I can see it. Let me just ask you this last question before I go. I can appreciate what you're saying, but again, the fact that you drove all the way over here, we'll step to the side. The fact that you drove all the way over here, what is going on in America that compels a teacher to get in the car and drive to North Carolina on a Friday night to march with a group of people she doesn't even know?
Right, because I'm with young people every day in high school, and I want them to know that someone is behind them and making sure that they're safe and believing in them. And that's what the problem is. A lot of people don't believe in our young people, and they just throw them aside. And this is why we're out here now, because a lot of young people feel like that people don't take them seriously. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
David,
Thank you for
actually,
talking.
can you ask the young lady a question real quick for me?
Ma'am, my coworker in New York has a question. May I ask you one more quick question? Go ahead, Vlad.
I'm curious, David. She said she's a teacher, and I'm wondering how she explains the things that have been happening in this country over the last couple of years to her students.
How do you explain to kids what has happened in this country over the last couple of years and what's happening now?
Well, the students and youth need to know that racism is real, and that even though we know that it's racism still in this country.
Guys, we're going to lean over here. We're going to stop here. If you want to join the march, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Vlad, we're going to cut it off. So here, guys, here's what I'd like to do as we keep talking. Let's get closer to protesters. Vlad, as we talk, Brian, if we can walk backwards just to get a view of what we're seeing. So on the interstate right now, there is a group of riot police that is marching up the interstate right now. They are moving toward the protesters who are on, again, we're on 277. So, Brian, if you pan right just to give us an idea, we'll show everybody. So that's the city center, right? That's the heart of that's the heart of Charlotte, if you will. And so that's where most of the protests have been centered over the last 4 days. Maybe we can get over the barricade, but
okay. Which way you want to go?
Which way do you...
Some way. Come on.
Okay. All right. So they're telling us to move backwards. So the protesters are behind us, Vlad. But at any rate, this is what happened last night, and it's happening again tonight. Anytime the protesters actually get onto the interstate, the police in riot gear move in, because the idea is you don't have the right to shut down a roadway such as this. They'll let you do a city street, but when you move onto an interstate like this, they move in. So that's what you're seeing happening right now. You have to hope that it will remain peaceful. It did for the most part last night. When they moved onto the interstate yesterday evening, they used a tear gas and actually some pepper spray, we're told. But so far that hasn't been deployed right now, and it's pretty quiet. I mean, again, the protesters are marching peacefully, but they got onto an interstate. You can't do that.
All right, David Begnaud on the ground for us on the fourth night of protests. David, thanks so much. We're going to be checking with you throughout the night. Thank you, David.
Sure, please, you bet.